If your neighbor ever seems too perfect, too friendly, too familiar, pay attention. Notice the little things, the details that don't make sense, the moments your instincts tell you something is wrong, because sometimes the people living next door aren't who they claim to be, and sometimes they were never there at all. Years later, Adam still avoids apartment buildings. He avoids long hallways. He avoids doors facing other doors. And whenever he hears footsteps outside his apartment late at night, he remembers apartment 204, the apartment that officially didn't exist, the neighbor nobody else remembered, and the night he discovered the truth hiding behind a locked door. This is Tales of the Dark, and this is the story of the new neighbor who never lived there. In October of 2021, Adam Carter was 28 years old and living alone in a small apartment complex outside Knoxville, Tennessee. The building wasn't remarkable. 3 floors, 36 units, faded brick walls, cracked parking spaces, a laundry room that constantly smelled of bleach and mildew. The kind of place people moved into temporarily and somehow ended up staying for years. Adam had been there nearly 11 months, long enough to know the rhythms of the building, the woman who walked her golden retriever every morning, the retired man who smoked outside at sunrise, the college student who blasted music through the walls at midnight. Nothing surprising ever happened there, at least not until October 14th. It was a Thursday. Adam arrived home from work just before sunset and noticed a moving truck parked outside the building. He barely paid attention. People moved in and out all the time. By the next week, the truck would be gone and somebody new would occupy one of the apartments. Just another face, just another neighbor. That night, while checking his mailbox, Adam met him, a man standing outside apartment 204. The unit directly across from his own. The stranger looked ordinary. Mid-30s, dark hair, clean-shaven, average height, the sort of face that disappeared from memory almost immediately. The man smiled. New neighbor. Adam introduced himself. The stranger offered his hand. "My name's Daniel." The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Then both men returned to their apartments. Simple, normal, forgettable, but over the next several weeks, Daniel seemed to be everywhere, every morning, every evening, every weekend. Whenever Adam stepped into the hallway, Daniel was there, checking his mailbox, reading a book, leaning against the balcony railing, looking at his phone, always nearby, always smiling, always friendly. Eventually, the 2 men became friends. They grabbed coffee together, watched football games, talked about work, talked about life. Daniel claimed he worked remotely for a software company. He said he moved frequently, didn't have family nearby. The details seemed believable. Nothing about him felt strange at first. Then Adam noticed something, a small detail, the kind of thing most people would ignore. Daniel never invited him inside apartment 204, not once. Months passed. The invitation never came. Whenever Adam suggested visiting, Daniel laughed and changed the subject. At first, Adam assumed he valued privacy. Some people did, but then other things began happening. Little things, uncomfortable things. One Saturday morning, Adam knocked on Daniel's door. No answer, yet he could clearly hear movement inside, footsteps. A chair scraping against the floor. Someone was definitely home, but the door never opened. Later that evening, Adam encountered Daniel near the mailboxes. He mentioned it casually. Daniel looked confused. "What do you mean? You were home earlier." "No, I wasn't." Adam laughed. "I literally heard someone inside." Daniel's smile lingered, but something about it looked forced. "I wasn't home." Then he walked away. The answer stayed with Adam longer than it should have, because it wasn't true, and both of them knew it. A week later, something happened that disturbed him even more. Adam was speaking with a maintenance worker named Ron, an older man who had worked at the complex for years. During the conversation, Adam casually mentioned Daniel. The maintenance worker frowned. "Who's Daniel?" "My neighbor." "Which apartment?" 204. Ron stared at him, then laughed, a genuine laugh, like Adam had just told a joke. "Nobody lives in 204. Adam laughed too for a second, then realized Ron wasn't joking, and suddenly, the conversation wasn't funny anymore. "Nobody lives in 204. The words followed Adam all the way back to his apartment. At first, he convinced himself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe Ron was confused. Maybe the leasing office hadn't updated their records. Maybe Daniel had only recently moved in. There were dozens of logical possibilities. But deep down, Adam already knew something was wrong, because Ron hadn't looked uncertain. He had looked genuinely puzzled, like Adam had asked about a person who didn't exist. That night, Adam couldn't stop thinking about it. Around 7 o'clock, he heard footsteps outside his door. He looked through the peephole, Daniel standing across the hallway, looking directly at apartment 204, not unlocking it, not entering it, just standing there, motionless, for nearly a full minute. Then Daniel slowly turned his head and looked directly toward Adam's door. A strange smile spread across his face. The kind of smile that wasn't really a smile at all. Then he entered apartment 204, the door closed. Adam felt a chill crawl down his spine. For the first time since meeting Daniel, he felt afraid, not terrified, just uneasy. The sort of feeling that tells you something is wrong even when you can't explain why. The next morning, Adam decided to visit the leasing office again. This time he wanted proof. The property manager was the same woman he had spoken to earlier, Lisa. She seemed surprised to see him. Back again. Adam nodded. I need you to explain something. Lisa folded her arms. Okay. Adam pointed toward the residential buildings outside. Apartment 204. The smile immediately vanished from her face. Yes, my neighbor lives there. No. He does. No, he doesn't. Adam felt irritation rising. His name is Daniel. Lisa stared, then turned her monitor toward him. The apartment database appeared on the screen. Unit 204, vacant, no lease agreement, no tenant, no payment records, nothing. Adam felt his stomach tighten. That's impossible. Lisa looked uncomfortable. Sir, nobody has rented that unit in over 2 years. 2 years, the number echoed inside his head. 2 years, yet he had spent weeks talking to Daniel, watching football, drinking coffee, having conversations. The man was real, he had to be. Adam left the office feeling worse than before, because now he had confirmation, official confirmation. Apartment 204 wasn't supposed to be occupied, yet every evening, Daniel walked through that door. That night, Adam made a decision. He was going to find out what was inside apartment 204. No matter what. Around midnight, the hallway became quiet. Most residents were asleep. The building settled into its usual silence. Adam waited another hour, then stepped outside. The corridor was empty. Only the soft hum of overhead lights filled the air. Apartment 204 stood directly across from him. The door looked ordinary. Brown paint, brass handle, small apartment number screwed into the wood, nothing unusual. Adam approached slowly, his heart pounded. He pressed his ear against the door. At first he heard nothing. Then, voices, multiple voices, men, women, maybe 6 or 7 people talking softly. Laughing, whispering, the sound made Adam freeze because Daniel supposedly lived alone. Yet it sounded like a gathering, a party. He listened carefully, trying to understand what they were saying. Most of the words were too muffled. Then suddenly, someone laughed. The voices stopped. Complete silence. Every conversation ended at the exact same moment. Adam stepped away from the door, his pulse racing. Then a voice spoke, clear, calm, male, only one sentence. He is listening again. Adam's blood turned cold. The voice wasn't talking to anyone inside, it was talking about him. The hallway remained silent. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Adam backed away slowly, then hurried back inside his apartment. He locked the door, locked the deadbolt, closed every curtain. For the first time since moving into the building, he barely slept. The following day, something happened that made everything worse. The apartment complex installed new security cameras. Management had been dealing with package thefts. Workers spent most of the morning replacing old equipment. That evening, Adam saw one of the maintenance employees reviewing camera footage in the office. A thought occurred to him: security cameras. If Daniel existed, he would appear on camera. Simple. Adam requested access to footage from the hallway. The employee agreed. Together they reviewed recordings from the previous week, and that's when reality stopped making sense. The hallway appeared exactly as Adam remembered it. Residents walking by, people checking mail, children running through the corridor, everything normal. Then Adam appeared on screen, standing outside apartment 204, talking, smiling, nodding, holding a cup of coffee, clearly having a conversation. The problem was, he was alone. There was nobody standing in front of him, nobody beside him, nobody across from him. The footage showed Adam speaking to empty air for nearly 15 minutes. The maintenance employee looked concerned. "Are you okay?" Adam couldn't answer. His mouth had gone dry. He watched the footage again. And again and again, every moment he remembered spending with Daniel was there. Every conversation, every interaction. Only Daniel wasn't. The camera never recorded him, not once. A cold wave of fear swept through Adam, because there were only two possible explanations. Either the cameras were malfunctioning, or Daniel wasn't being recorded, and somehow, that second possibility felt more believable. The employee eventually shut the footage off. "You should probably get some rest." Adam nodded, but he wasn't listening. His attention was fixed on one specific frame near the end of the recording. Something strange appeared, very strange, as Adam walked back toward his apartment. Apartment 204's door opened slightly, just a few inches, and for a single frame, something looked out, not Daniel, not anyone human, a pale face, long, distorted, eyes completely black, watching from the darkness. Then the footage skipped, and the face vanished. The employee never noticed it, but Adam did, and once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. That night he returned home shaking. Every light in apartment 204 was off, no voices, no movement, nothing. For several hours he sat awake, watching the door through the peephole, waiting. Around 3:17 a.m., he finally saw movement. Apartment 204 slowly opened. A narrow gap appeared, darkness inside. Then a figure stepped into the hallway. Daniel, except something was wrong, terribly wrong. His movements looked unnatural. Stiff, jerky, like someone learning how to walk. He slowly turned his head and stared directly at Adam's door. Then he smiled, a smile far wider than any human mouth should be capable of making, and began walking toward him. At exactly 3:17 in the morning, Daniel stepped out of apartment 204 and began walking toward Adam's door. The hallway lights flickered, once, twice, then stabilized. Adam stood frozen behind the peephole, his heart hammered so hard he could hear it. Daniel's movements weren't normal. Every step looked wrong, too stiff, too deliberate. Like something pretending to be human, the smile never left his face. And it wasn't a smile anymore. It stretched impossibly wide, far beyond the limits of a human mouth. Adam stumbled backward. His breathing became shallow. Everything inside him screamed to stay silent, stay hidden. Don't let it know you're watching, but the thing outside already knew. It stopped directly in front of his apartment door, motionless, waiting. Then came 3 knocks, slow, heavy, deliberate, knock, knock, knock. Adam didn't move. The hallway became silent. Several seconds passed. Then Daniel spoke. His voice sounded normal. "Almost, Adam." Another pause. "Open the door." Adam backed farther away. Every instinct in his body told him the same thing. Do not answer, do not speak, do not open the door. The silence continued for nearly a minute. Then footsteps slowly retreated down the hallway. Adam rushed back to the peephole. Daniel was gone. Apartment 204's door stood open. A narrow rectangle of darkness waited beyond it. For the rest of the night, Adam remained awake. As sunrise approached, exhaustion finally replaced fear. And with daylight came anger, because none of this made sense. Not the cameras, not Daniel, not apartment 204. There had to be an explanation, a real explanation. That morning, Adam returned to the leasing office. This time he demanded access to older building records. The manager resisted at first, but eventually agreed. What Adam discovered changed everything. Apartment 204 hadn't always been vacant. 3 years earlier it had been occupied by a tenant named Daniel Mercer. The same name, the same face, the same man. Adam's stomach tightened. He immediately asked for the rest of the file. The manager hesitated, then handed it over. Inside was a newspaper clipping, an incident report, and a death certificate. 3 years earlier, Daniel Mercer had disappeared, not moved, not transferred, disappeared. According to the report, neighbors had complained about strange noises coming from apartment 204 for weeks. Voices, footsteps, people entering and leaving at odd hours. Management eventually performed a welfare check. When maintenance unlocked the apartment, they found it empty, no tenant, no furniture, no belongings, nothing. Daniel had vanished without a trace. The police investigated for months, no evidence, no suspects, no explanation, case unresolved. Adam felt cold, very cold, because he had spent months talking to that man, a man who officially disappeared 3 years ago, a man who should not have existed. Then he noticed something else. Attached to the file was a photograph taken shortly before Daniel's disappearance. The image showed Daniel standing outside apartment 204, smiling, and behind him, through the open doorway, stood several people, their faces blurred, their features distorted, almost as if the camera couldn't focus on them. Adam immediately recognized one thing. One of those faces looked exactly like the pale figure from the security footage. The black-eyed face staring from the darkness. The same thing, the same impossible thing. That evening, Adam packed a bag. He had already decided. He was leaving, maybe forever, maybe just for a few days. But he wasn't spending another night across from apartment 204. As he loaded clothes into a duffel bag, he heard movement outside, lots of movement, footsteps, voices, dozens of them. The hallway sounded crowded, like a gathering. Adam slowly approached the peephole and nearly collapsed. People filled the corridor, men, women, children, all standing silently outside apartment 204, every single one facing the door, motionless, waiting. Some wore modern clothes, others wore styles decades old. A few looked strangely familiar, faces he'd seen on missing person posters, faces from local news reports. Faces that shouldn't have been there. Then apartment 204 opened, the crowd slowly turned, and Daniel stepped out, smiling. The hallway lights dimmed, one by one, until only a faint glow remained. Daniel raised his hand and pointed directly at Adam's apartment. Every head turned toward his door. At the same moment, every face staring directly at him, even though they couldn't see through the wall. Adam stepped away from the peephole, terrified. Then came the knocking, not 3 knocks this time, hundreds. Every person in the hallway began knocking simultaneously. The sound echoed through the building. Walls vibrated, doors rattled, windows shook. Boom, 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 boom. The entire floor trembled beneath the noise. Adam grabbed his bag, rushed toward the rear exit, and ran. He never used the front hallway, never passed apartment 204. He escaped through a maintenance staircase and reached the parking lot. As he drove away, he looked up toward the building and froze. Apartment 204's balcony was visible from the road. Daniel stood there, watching, smiling. Dozens of shadowy figures stood behind him, their black eyes fixed on Adam's car. Then the balcony lights went out, the figures disappeared. And Adam never returned. The following morning he contacted the leasing office. His lease was terminated. His belongings were collected by movers. Everything ended, or so he thought. 6 months later, curiosity got the better of him. Adam searched the apartment complex online. The building still existed. The reviews still existed. The residents still lived there. Everything seemed normal until he looked at the floor plan. Apartment 204 wasn't listed. The numbering skipped directly from 203 to 205, as though 204 had never existed. Adam spent hours researching old records, archived listings, property maps. Every version of the building showed the same thing. No 204, no Daniel Mercer, no missing tenant, nothing. It was as if every trace had been erased, except for one thing. A year later, a local news station reported a missing person. A 26-year-old man lived alone, disappeared without warning. Last known address, the same apartment complex, the same floor, the apartment directly across from where 204 should have been. The report included a photograph, and standing in the background, partially visible through an open doorway, Was Daniel smiling, exactly the same, not a day older? Waiting for another neighbor, for another conversation, for another person willing to trust the friendly man across the hall, because some neighbors move away, some neighbors disappear, and some neighbors never lived there at all. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, and if you have your own terrifying story, share it in the comments or send it by email. Your story might become the next nightmare.